So, what a great pleasure to be sitting here with Loung Ung, author of the book, First They Killed My Father, and screenwriter and executive producer of the movie. She's now, of course, happily resettled in the United States, where she married an American and co-owns a restaurant in Ohio. And next to me, of course, Angelina Jolie, director, producer, and screenwriter of this remarkable movie, as well as the Academy Award-winning actress, and the movie opens tonight at TIFF, so it's very exciting to have her with us. Let me start with you, Loung, because it's your story. You were 5 years old when the Khmer Rouge stormed into Phnom Penh and screamed at you just to leave the city immediately, ending your happy life forever. And now you've seen the traumatic 5 years that followed harrowingly recreated on the screen. I mean, just tell us what it was like to watch this movie when you sat there, seeing it all replayed.
It was so real to see the soldiers and to re-experience the trucks coming in and the soldiers in their black pants and black shirts and their guns and their smiles. And Angie did such a great job of capturing all of that. And so for me, I kind of psyched myself up for it, and I prepped myself to be strong, to be able to witness it, and I was good at it. And then we went into another scene where the family did the very, very simple thing of sitting together at a dinner table and having dinner, and that completely broke me.
Right, because it reminded you of the normality of what your life was.
And it was just something that I think so many people take for granted, and to visually see a scene where my family of 9, was at a table and my mother was serving the food in the movie and all the people sitting and eating and talking. I don't have a picture of that with my family. That picture broke, and that life was taken away from me on April 17th of 1975. And so to see it on the screen, I almost felt as if my family was alive again, that we were once again at the dinner table. Since then, every time we have a celebration or a Buddhist ceremony, we would leave empty plates, 2 empty plates for the spirits to come and sit with us. But in that movie, I felt like we were all sitting together once again.
Oh, so moving. Well, Angelina, Cambodia is the place where you started your family with the adoption of Maddox, right? So, and it's really where you were first awakened to be an activist. So what does Cambodia mean to you, and why has it become such an intense part of your life?
Well, it's true. It was, I went there over 16 years ago, and I was doing a film, and we were the first film back since the war. And when I went there, I researched a bit, and I realized how little I knew, how ignorant I was, how lacking my education was in what had happened to this country and these people. And I came in thinking, well, people that went through all of this must be quite a hardened people, quite sad, quite broken, and I would understand why. And then I went and I met these resilient, kind, open, generous people, and I really understood something about life, and I learned about what it is to be refugees, about landmines, about so many things. And I sat on a street corner one lunch break, and I bought a little $2 book called First They Killed My Father, and I sat and read it, and she taught me about the war, and that book taught me, and I carried it with me. And then months after the film, I wanted to go back, and we ended up on the phone because we were both working on the campaign to ban landmines, and we decided we would meet in country. And so we met, and we started to, we traveled, we ended up in a monsoon. And during that monsoon, I said, can I ask you something? I'm thinking of adopting from Cambodia, and would you, as a Cambodian orphan yourself, would you be offended? Or would you be supportive? And had she said anything differently, my life would be very different. And so we've known each other since. She's really helped me as I raised Maddox to know who he is. Mm-hmm. And we came back to do this
deep
together.
friendship.
There we are.
There we are.
That was quite a big moment for us, considering
Wonderful.
our history, the 3 of us.
So Loung, you and Angelina wrote the screenplay together, I gather. So what change was there in your understanding of your own story in that 16 years? Because, you wrote your book. and now you had to turn it into a movie with Angelina, the two of you. You know, how did you sort of relate to that experience as you thought about your own story?
Angie's a phenomenal writer, so I took the lead from her and we worked on it. But for me, when you're writing a book, you have 110,000 words to craft a story, and sometimes you're outside of yourself, and sometimes you're floating and you're in a spirit, you're in the ground, but when you're writing, when we were adapting the screenplay, I was very aware of being anchor, of as a child, you have to be in your body, and you have to be aware that you're in your, and also it's dangerous. It was dangerous not to be aware, not to be conscious, not to be planning your next step, because that could be a landmine that you're stepping on the dirt, or it could be a soldiers around the corner, and having to sort of be so aware of your surrounding was something that I've forgotten being in America all these years, that we go out of our homes and we wait for the street sign to tell us when to walk. Mm-hmm. We close the window when it rains, and when you're in Cambodia, you have to live with all 5 of your senses, and your sixth sense, whether it's spirits, it's intuition, or whatever, you have to use all your senses in order to stay alive, because you don't have a choice not to. And it's not a matter of just survival. It's not as easy as that. To survive, you have to be strategic. You have to commit. You have to devote. You have to work at survival.
Do you want to just see, should we just see that very, very powerful clip from the film which is about landmines? Okay, let's look. Angie, tell me about filming that film and what that was like to put all that together.
Well, it was. It's a very it's a very. It's a country that still has many landmines in the ground. In the place that I work, the area where we have our headquarters, we found over 48 landmines in a bunker, and we had to demine. When we were going to film in a certain area, we would make sure it was swept before we went. The country itself has just, it's been so, you really, the damage and how many civilians are killed by landmines is it over 80%? It's something absolutely horrific.
But for you, lived through it, I mean, to see that must have been unbelievable.
And when you stepped on a landmine, now I'm so grateful. And every time I watch that scene, I feel tingles in my toes still. When you step on a mine, everything below you, rocks, dirt, grass, toenails, bones, shoes, they become secondary missiles, shooting up into your limbs, disintegrating your flesh. And if you survive, and back then, 90% of people die from blood loss before they get to help. And then if you make it to the hospital where there are doctors, where the doctors are able to help, where there are supplies that can, chances are you would have to have your limbs amputated. And had I stepped on a mine when I was that age, every 6 months, 8 months, a year and a half, if I was lucky, depending how well the amputation was made, how fast I grew, I would have to have my limbs go to a center and have them cut and recut and cut and recut again until you stop growing, because a child's stump will heal, but the bones will continue to grow and protrude out of the stump. And I am so, so, so grateful that I left with all my limbs intact. But I watched something like that, and my feet and toes continued to tingle with anxiety and fear. And I'm so grateful that Cambodia is still one of the most mined countries in the world, but there are groups working to demine the land, because it also denies people access to the land, access to ways to support themselves decades after the war.
Mm-hmm. Angie, this film was a huge logistical challenge, I would think, to do. I mean, it's masses of people, it's on a foreign setting, I mean, and it's very grueling content. the last couple of movies you've done have also been very sort of harrowing subject matter. Why are you drawn back to doing these kind of very, very harrowing stories? Because, you know, there are easier movies to make.
Well, you know, when you do a film, when you direct a film, you're going to be focusing on it for years of your life, and I want to learn something, and I want to grow, and I want to participate in this thing you're all here for, why you all come to these meetings. We all want to talk and learn about what's happening. We want to learn more. We want to contribute more. So this is what we should dedicate our time to. And this country, I felt, having been there so many years, I knew how much it was not discussed in the country, and I knew how many people knew nothing really about what happened in Cambodia, and I felt for the world, but especially for Cambodia, that this was necessary. And there had been beautiful films made before, but this is in their language, and this is them, and through their eyes. And I knew that if we could make it in country, it would be, forgetting it's a movie, it's just if we could actually do it on the land where it actually happened with the people it happened to. Anybody over 40 remembers the war. That was our crew.
And how was that, you know, working with those people? Because you said you did the movie for Maddox, and obviously his generation did not go through it, but the older generation did. What was the atmosphere on the cast, and, you know, with the cast and on the set as these horrendous national events were being filmed?
Well, I think in the end, it was very cathartic for them. I don't want to speak for them, but I know the amount of people. There was many tears. There were many days where everybody would come together and just hold each other and talk. Many times a young person would do a scene, but then their mother was in the corner crying and saying, "That's what it was like. That's what happened. I never told you, but that's how," or, you know, or there was a day someone came out and said, "That's how they took your grandfather." And she finally told her daughter for the first time and explained it, and then they sat in the corner and talked. And we had therapists on set to be able to talk people through it. And, you know, it wasn't just making a film, it was recreating a horror on the land with the people that it really happened to. So it was very heavy. And this isn't me. This country chose to do this. The country allowed it to be made. The country made it themselves. They participated. They were brave enough to do it, and they put their heart and soul into it. And had they not wanted to or be ready, I wouldn't have touched it. So.
Right. Well, one of the most powerful scenes in the film is when your mother tells the three of you to leave the camp and tells you to run in different directions. That must have been agony for her and for you. And I mean, watching it also, Angie, as a mother yourself, I'd love to hear for you what it was like to direct that scene. But tell us about that.
Wow. I don't know, it still makes me emotional today, just thinking that as a child, I didn't get it. I absolutely did not get a mother's heart. I didn't even get a human's heart. All I could remember was that my father had kept us together for a whole year, and then he was taken, and 3 months later, my mother was gathering my brothers and sisters and I and telling us to leave her. And when I didn't want to go, she turned me by my shoulders, pushed me out the door, and said, "Get out, I don't want you." I felt abandoned. Can't look at the pictures, but I did. I felt as if she didn't love me, and I grew up with a very sort of complicated relationship with my mother's history. It took me many years and working for 3 years in domestic violence shelters in Maine to realize the strength and beauty and courage of a mother's heart. And that what she had to do, she had to necessarily do in order to keep us alive. And she knew that if we all couldn't stay alive together, she needed to separate us in order to give us a fighting chance to survive apart. But I didn't understand that. So I grew up thinking she was weak. I grew up thinking she didn't love me. I grew up thinking my mother wanted me away. And you know, with first they killed my father, really was my desire to tell the world what had happened in the war, but what also it takes to survive a war. And with Lucky Child, actually, I wrote 2 more books. It was a love story to my mother and a thankfulness and a gratitude for her for doing what she did and fighting the only way she could. And that's a mother's heart, that you will fight with whatever. I'm not a mother, you know, but I'm so grateful to all the mothers because you have a strength.
You know, you certainly are a mother. You have 6 kids, right? And you've spent so much time, in your humanitarian work in refugee camps where there are so many orphan kids, right? So what are you bringing to this as a mother, this project? I mean, how are you sort of approaching it, since you now are a mother yourself of such?
Well, I think in many ways this is, and if you see this film, I think for a lot of parents seeing this film, this is your nightmare. The nightmare isn't just something horrible happening to your children, it's also being in a situation where you just slowly watch your children tortured in a way, starved, murdered, so many, and you just can't do anything. You can't give them anything. And you have to do things like, I have so much love and respect for Loung Ung's parents and her mother, and for me, that scene, I can't imagine the extent of that mother's love, that she passed away maybe not knowing if Loung Ung would ever understand. But she had to do that in order for Loung Ung to be strong enough to say fine and walk out that door and go survive and be here today. Was that decision made by her mother? But I think the film, the looking through the child's point of view, is maybe what I bring, in that my children teach me. I'm raised by my children. They teach me everything every day. I look at the world through their eyes, and I'm better for it. And so this film is very much through a child's eyes.
What did they learn from these humanitarian trips? Because your children have had the most extraordinary, upbringing, in the sense that they've gone to all of these places with you very often. And of course, as you said, Maddox was is listed as an executive producer. He really wanted to be a part of this film now. How are they evolving themselves as people who are interested in these issues? Or is it really turning them off and all they want to do is sit at home and watch baseball, I mean?
Well, I hope I'm doing, exactly.
It's like, I would think they would say, like, no more Pakistan, no more,
There is. Well, I try to give them the balance of it so it never comes to that, And I also try to, really, I think, I never wanted to raise the kids to think, and I really believe this, connecting to other people, helping other people is a pleasure and a privilege. And it's never something where I'm saying to them, I want you to do this because you should, it's right and it's good. I want you to be with people in other countries because I want you to enjoy them, explore them, share with them, respect them, celebrate them. And so, yes, I want them to have empathy, but that comes naturally if they're exposed. So for me, the fact they live in the world, they have friends all around the world, and I hope they're being raised to see the value of diversity, the value of other people, and then all of these other things come into place. And of course, they see things happening in the world. They ask the questions we're all asking. They see what's happening in Syria or in Myanmar, and they ask why. And we're all trying to find the same answers because it's very hard to explain why we're allowing certain things to happen.
Well, let's take a look at one of the scenes from the film, which shows the massiveness of what happened when the Khmer Rouge arrived and told you all to go. Let's see that clip, shall we? What is so powerful about that film is the sense of unbelievable chaos and the child absolutely overwhelmed by it. How was it directing this young girl, this young actress who was the young Loung Ung? And then I'd love to hear from Loung Ung how it is that you responded with each other. How did you find her, Angie, in terms of getting to know Loung Ung and being Loung Ung with Loung on the set?
Well, this little girl and so many people across the country, there's talented artists. Cambodia is so full of talented artists, and if people walk away from this film and at least see that, And that's my hope for the country as well, all that they're able to do and express. And of course, artists were targeted under the Khmer Rouge, so to see them come forward with art is really important. The young actress is so intelligent and so giving and so full of fire, just like that one, that she just, she led the way. Really, so much of it is we would do certain scenes and we would talk about what's happening, we would explain it to her, and what was beautiful is sometimes I'd find her become emotional about a scene and I'd ask, well, if she was all right or what, and she was thinking about Loung Ung because she loves her. So she would be very sad when she had to do a scene about her having to say goodbye to her mom. She would get sad for her. Mm-hmm. And then after the scene, she wanted to go find her and hug her and talk to her. So she wanted, she really understood the story. I know you're friends with Meryl Streep at some point. My nickname for her was Meryl. She's that good. She didn't understand what I was referring to.
Loung, you know, this child was you, right? And so you had to have this relationship. Did you form a real bond with this little girl? And I mean, did you manage to sort of also educate her a little bit about her country's history, or did she just instinctively know?
We're very close. We're actually very, very close. And you know, I love her. She loves me. I love her parents, who are actually younger than me. And so, you know, I think instinctually a child's heart knows the truth of humanity. And I think she knows the truth of the suffering and the tragedies, because we live in a country, I mean, they live in a country the size of the state of Oklahoma that is littered with today over 20,000 mass graves. And so they can feel the energy and just the history of the land. But we were able to share with them the history of what happened, and with everybody around each other, around on the set. The Cambodians, you know, I think everybody was affected, whether they were survivors themselves or children of survivors. They all wanted to know, and they were ready to talk. And the set was a very kind environment. And it was also a prideful environment, because these were also artists and musicians and builders and costume designers and Cambodians coming together to do this collaborative project. Whereas in writing for me was very solitary, very personal and alone and lonely. And being on the set, we were together. We were stronger together. We were happier together. We were sadder together. In the end, we all stood up higher together.
Mm-hmm. Angelina, you said you did the movie for Maddox because he, you know, was a Cambodian orphan, is a Cambodian orphan. Do you want to do the same for your other two children? I mean, you have who you've adopted. You've adopted one from Sudan and one from Vietnam, right? Ethiopia,
yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. Well, we have projects in their country. There are different, whether it be film or it be a foundation and a project, humanitarian project in their countries. We do, and it's very important to bring them back and engage them. So whether it be art or this. There was, of course, an unusual moment in this where the Vietnamese enter and fight the Khmer Rouge. So I had my son's country on one side of the river and my other son's country on the other side of the river. But I will look for all different ways to communicate about their histories and really to teach them. We homeschool, and I'm very, very aware of their education. I'm also very aware of what's lacking. And, you know, for example, it's very important to me, my daughter Zahara doesn't start learning about her history through the civil rights movement in America. That's not how she begins to learn about herself as a young African American. Yeah. That she needs to learn about the great history of Africa and who she is, and the pride and the beauty and you know, many, many, many things, and not start, for example, with the civil rights. So these are things I try to adjust in our home school.
Loung Ung, what do you want the message for the movie to be when people see it at the end? I mean, what is your hope that they will feel when they see this movie?
That for women, especially, and men, but especially for women, that we have more worth, more strength, more value than we ever give ourselves credit for, I think, especially in the Western world. And also that peace is not an automatic. Peace is not something you wish for and wait for it to be granted. Peace is in action, many, many, many actions, and we have to work at it, strategize for it, commit ourselves to it, and that is how we are going to affect change in our world.
Thank you. Angelina, as someone who has spent so much time, as we've discussed, working in the arenas of human rights, where are you going to put your energies and your focus next in terms of what is happening in the world right now? There is just so much turmoil.
Well, I think like for most people, we're feeling quite overwhelmed, and we know no small thing is going to make the difference. We have to do all the little small things and continue to, but we're going to have to make some very big choices and push hard. I continue to work with UNHCR with over 65 million people displaced in the world, continuing to be displaced in many countries. I'm very concerned about. I will continue to work in Cambodia. I'm very. It's very important to make sure that we are continuing to push for democracy.
Yeah, because things have gotten a little grave over there.
There's much to to have progress and peace. You cannot just look away and hope things. You have to fight. There's many extraordinary people there who are raising their voices, and they need to be supported and heard. And we need to take care. I'm very concerned about things happening in Yemen. I'm very concerned about Syria, Myanmar. So there's just so much for all of us to do, and the first and foremost is we have to just get the best education. And I think, like all of you, I'm doing my best to search with all that's accessible to us. Sometimes we get completely overwhelmed and we don't know what to believe and what to do. So I'm just trying to listen to other women. I'm trying to, lend my voice where possible. But
and tell the stories, which is
tell stories, yes. But we all need to do, I think, even more than we've ever done, because we're at a very dark time.
All right. Well, thank you so much. The movie is so powerful. I do recommend it. It's gripping, as was the book, which I read on vacation, and I didn't think the movie could be, could somehow capture the extraordinariness of the book, but it does. So I urge you all to go see it. It's, and you'll never forget that First They Killed My Father. It is a very powerful film. Thank you.
Thank you very much.